Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John McDougall. I am the event coordinator here at Murder by the Book, and I'm super excited for tonight's event. But before we get into it, I just wanted to make some general store announcement stuff. First up, if you have not come to visit us in a while, we hope that you will. We are open for browsing. We are still asking that you wear masks when you come in the store, and we're still doing curbside pickup if you are not getting out and about. You can just give us a call when you pull into the parking lot. We are happy to run books out to you. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up. I think we're about to kind of complete the 2021 virtual calendar. I'll be adding a bunch of stuff to the website in the next couple of days, but we've got a nice full October. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we'll be doing a ticketed event with Richard Osman. McKenna will be chatting with Reese Bone and Hank Willoughby Ryan tomorrow night at 7 Central. Thursday night, we've got Susanna Kearsley in conversation with Hallie Efron. And then on Friday, we've got L. Allison Heller in conversation with Chandler Baker. So that's this week. We've got multiple events happening several days next week too. So I think we pretty much have something on the books almost every day for the rest of the month, except Saturdays and Sundays. So definitely check out murderbooks.com for more info about all of our upcoming events and to order books. Also wanted to mention before we get into it this evening, we have signed book plates for both Fleur and Elizabeth's books. So if you are looking for holiday gifts and you need sets or you need book plates, if you place your orders with us, either at murderbooks.com or give us a call or come into the store, we will have book plates for all of those as well. And while they're chatting this evening, we hope if you have any questions for them about their books, writing process, any of that, you can post those in the live chat on YouTube or the comments on Facebook. I'm super excited for tonight's event. We were just chatting before we went live about how one of the kind of upsides to the virtual events is that we're able to pair up authors. We're able to do events that we wouldn't necessarily get to do in store. That we don't do nearly as many kids events as I would like us to do. You know, for many of you, if you live locally, you know that we have the fantastic Blue Willow Bookshop here in town, and they kind of have the lock on kids events, and we will periodically have authors drop by, but we don't get as many kids authors in the store as we would love. So I'm so excited for tonight's event. I'm a big fan of both books, and I'm super excited to kind of turn the chat over to them once things get going and kind of just get to sit back and enjoy. So I'm going to bring out our authors tonight. I'm going to start with Fleur Bradley. How are you tonight, Fleur?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here.
It's so nice to actually get to meet you in person. I feel like we've chatted online forever, so it's nice to get to see you face to face.
Mm-hmm.
So Fleur's most recent book, Midnight at the Barclay Hotel, just came out in paperback in August. And she is an active member of the SCBWI and MWA, where she is judged for the Edgars. She regularly does school and Skype visits, as well as librarian and educator conference talks on reaching reluctant readers. Originally from the Netherlands, she now lives in Colorado, not too far from the historic and haunted Stanley Hotel, which partly inspired this manuscript. And also wanted to mention that Midnight in the Barclay Hotel was also nominated for the Agatha and the Anthony Award. And I'm super excited that we get to, we'll hear a little bit about the book as well this evening. She's going to be really leading our conversation with Elizabeth. So now I'm going to bring out Elizabeth C. Bunce. How are you tonight, Elizabeth?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having us on release day for Cold-Blooded Myrtle. I really appreciate the support from independent booksellers. The news just broke today that Cold-Blooded Myrtle is an indie next pick.
Oh, congratulations.
So yeah, so it will be hopefully getting a lot of attention around the country for that. So that's been it's been amazing having so much support from the indie community and particularly events like this. I'm really thrilled to be here.
So since we have been graced by your cat, you have to tell us what the cat's name is.
His name is Harley. And he came with that name already. And the first day he was here, we were thinking, we're not really Harley people. I was petting him and he starts going, vroom, vroom. It's like, okay, I think I know why you have that name. Yeah. So yeah, he is my writing kitty, Zoom kitty, dinner. Yeah.
I'm sure mine will make an appearance at some point. Calvin is curled up under me and Juliet is buzzing around somewhere. So I'm sure mine will pop in at some point this evening as well. So as Elizabeth mentioned, her book Cold-Blooded Myrtle just came out today. It is the third in the Myrtle series. Elizabeth grew up on a steady diet of Sherlock Holmes, Trixie Belden, and Quincy, M.E., and always played the lead prosecutor in mock trial. She's never had a governess, and no one has ever accused her of being irresponsible, but a teacher did once call her argumentative, which was entirely untrue, and she can prove it. She lives in Kansas City with her husband and their cats, and the first book in the series, Premeditated Myrtle, won the Edgar Award for, which, I'm sorry, I had this, which young reader
Best juvenile mystery.
Best juvenile, okay. I always get the two young reader ones confused. So I am going to turn the chat over to y'all and let you talk. As I mentioned, if you guys have questions out there for either author, please post those in the comments and we will get to them in a little bit. But for now, I'm going to sit back and enjoy this talk and let you guys get to it.
Awesome.
I'm so glad you're here. It's like we're sitting together and we're having some tea or coffee or whatever.
Or cake. Thank you.
Or
for inviting
cake.
me.
We were just discussing cake and how great it is to have cake. So I'm really excited to talk to you today because I love this series. And I'm hoping that you will maybe talk a little bit, introduce us a little bit to the series, and then maybe do a reading from the latest book. If you like.
Absolutely. So the Myrtle Hardcastle Mysteries, which began last fall with the dual release of book 1, Premeditated Myrtle, and book 2, How to Get Away with Myrtle, are about a 12-year-old girl named Myrtle who is obsessed with the new Victorian sciences of criminology. So fingerprinting, toxicology, crime scene analysis, all of that is right up her wheelhouse. And she is in the first book, her neighbor dies under mysterious circumstances, and she seizes her chance to solve her first crime. And then, as these things tend to go, she continues to find her way into further murder mysteries as we go along. And so book 1 was kind of a classic cozy mystery set in an English garden. How to Get Away, which is my favorite in the series, is your sort of Agatha Christie whodunit set on a train at a seaside village. And Myrtle's horrible great aunt has sadly probably not killed someone. Cold-Blooded Myrtle, which I'm actually hearing from a couple people is their favorite in the series, and might have my favorite cover because we feature now Myrtle's partner in criminology, her governess, Miss Judson. Cold-Blooded Myrtle finds Myrtle and Miss Judson and Peony, their cat, solving their first cold case during an exceptionally Victorian Christmas full of all those classic Christmas trappings and those Christmas carols and plum puddings and mincemeat and mistletoe strewn everywhere. And the festivities are interrupted by a string of cryptic murders in the village that are being presaged by the manipulation of a Christmas shop window display. And the inspiration for this book happened around the holiday season when I was writing Premeditated. Some friends of ours had an incident occur in their Christmas village where, you know, with all the miniature houses set up and all the snowy scenes. I suspect there was a cat involved, but no one really knows. However, their daughter was home from college at the time and came in and to a scene of carnage, buildings knocked over, figures broken, things scattered every which way. And instead of putting it to rights, she turned it into a crime scene with trails of blood and crime scene tape. And my husband came running in from seeing the post on Facebook, and he says, I have your third book. And I was like, yeah, that's fantastic. And so the germ of the story started with the idea of murders in this little village. So
I love it. I love it. It's a great book. I had the privilege of reading it before it came out today. And I love your enthusiasm for the series. It's contagious and it's wonderful. So I didn't know if you wanted to maybe read a passage for
sure.
people tuning in, and then we can get to some of the questions.
I would love to. Thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit of this scene from the cover, and what you can see on the cover is this. You can tell my mirror filming skills are just top notch, aren't they? This building is the Campanile, a bell tower at the local college campus, and here they are up in the bell tower with the bells. And many years ago, when Myrtle's mom was a student at the college, a young woman, a student at the college, fell from the Campanile and vanished. And her body was never discovered, and no one knows what became of Olive Blackwell. So there's olives and a wishing well in the display. No one knows what happened to her, and that is sort of the start of the story. And so Myrtle and Miss Judson have gone to the Schofield College campus to visit the Campanile and the site of the disappearance. And I think the only other thing you need to know before I get in is that we're going to mention Myrtle's mother in the scene. Her name is Jemima Bell. So the chapter is chapter 6, Ding Dong Warily on High. Sir Isaac Newton, each chapter of the Myrtle books begins with an epigraph from a book on the subject matter at hand, written by the erudite H.M. Hardcastle, and in this case, it's a history of the origins of Christmas. So, Sir Isaac Newton, England's greatest scientific mind, was, by British reckoning, born on Christmas Day, 1642. A charming fact until you realize that the rest of the Western world had already adopted the modern Gregorian calendar, according to which Newton's birthday is, in fact, 4 January. H.M. Hardcastle, a modern Yuletide. So they have gone to the Campanile, and they have met the carillonist, who has invited them up to meet or to visit the instrument that plays the carillon, which is the instrument that plays the bells. And I'm sorry, this is my very first time doing this, and I will be working out the kinks in this presentation. So she led us into a dark closet of a space, tiny arrow loop windows casting faint illumination over an iron staircase. It gets easier after this first bit. The first narrow flight spiraled through the tower's cramped stone footing, but then the stairs widened to fill the entire square tower where light poured down from the belfry arches. It was gloriously warm inside, and Miss Judson unwrapped her muffler. "What powers it?" I asked. "Steam," said the carillonist. "We're atop a network of steam tunnels that heat and supply power to the whole college. It's very modern." Here we are. We had reached a landing a little more than halfway up, and the carillonist shook out a ring of keys. "Clavier is in here. That's the keyboard." So for the next few scenes, she teaches Myrtle how to play the bells, which is very fun. And then after that, Leah, the carillonist, says, "You must come up to the belfry. The tour's not complete until you've seen the bells themselves." Whereupon Miss Judson and I recalled the purpose of our errand. Leah did not appear to notice our awkward silence, but led us from the clavier chamber back to the stairwell. "It's up this way, past the clock." She said this gravely, as if there were anywhere else they might have stashed 30 tons of bronze bells. After the ringing of the bells, the silence was crushing in all around us, but thin, fresh air rushed in from every direction, including below. We ladies of quality instinctively held our hands to our skirts to keep them from inflating and carrying us off. There hasn't been a Carol Honest here for years since Mother retired. Well, for several years anyway, said Leah. Since what happened to Olive Blackwell? I said that unintentionally. My excuse, dear reader, is that I was dizzy and breathless from the climb, and not nearly enough oxygen was feeding my brain cells for things like etiquette. Leah, clearly accustomed to the exertion, tilted her head and regarded me with her unsettlingly pale eyes. Exactly. That's why you came, isn't it? I flushed and Miss Judson looked chagrined. We didn't mean to pry, she lied politely. It's why everyone comes. Leah's voice was kind. If I'm honest, it might even be why I come. You can't help but be curious. It happened up here. Voice hushed. She indicated the space right above us. There was no doorway, just the abrupt end to the stairs as they reached the belfry. She held out an inviting arm. Watch where you step. If the irony was intended, dear reader, it was impossible to say. The belfry was like being atop a huge chimney. The icy wind whooshed through the stone arches to buffet us, but merely whistled among the forest of bells, not strong enough to budge them. They hung in marshaled rows, largest to smallest at the top. Miss Judson and I could have fit together inside one of the largest bells, suspended in the emptiness below our feet. Those nearest the ceiling were no bigger than my head, and in between, dozens more of every graduated size. There's hardly anywhere to step, I said. Only a precarious wooden catwalk hugged the perimeter to permit maintenance of the bells. But it was all too easy to see how one misstep could cause catastrophe. One thing was certain. This was not a place where anyone would bother to carry an unconscious or dead victim. It was too cumbersome, too inaccessible when there were perfectly good ditches and sewers available. Whatever had brought Olive Blackwell to this bell tower that frigid winter night, she had come of her own volition. What was she doing up here? I hadn't really meant to ask that out loud. I wasn't expecting Leah to answer. There was some sort of ritual, she said, voice soft as a whisper. I jerked my head around to see Miss Judson staring at her as well. A group of students gathered here for a secret ceremony. She laid a pensive hand upon a curve of bronze, and it all went horribly wrong.
I love that cliffhanger, and I love that reading.
Oh, thank you.
I love your dialogue and your ability to make a historical time period accessible for young readers. It's really a great talent. And I want to ask you, okay, so Myrtle, is she like you or is she not at all like you?
She's entirely me. She is entirely 100% me. When I was in 8th grade and my homeroom teacher told my parents I was antisocial and argumentative. And then they felt the need to come home and share that information with me, naturally. but yeah, so these books are just indulging that girl and seeing what she might have been like in a different era with more supportive educators.
Those are perfect qualities for a writer, by the way. So I think you picked the right career there.
Well, the funny thing is, I was being steered toward things like mock trial and debate that actually require skills in arguing. Mm-hmm. And I am the least confrontational and argue-prone person in the world. And I'm so glad that I did not go into law or politics or something where I really have to argue for a living, because I would be horrible at it. I'd be like, okay. I'll just put the arguments into my characters' mouths and let them speak for me.
Yeah, that's the fun part of being a writer. So both of us write mysteries. I know that there's, from my own experience, there's challenges as far as trying to write a mystery and something with a murder in it, a dead body, some of the things that come with writing a mystery that are challenging when you're introducing those concepts to kids. So how do you approach that, as far as how do you look at a story and see what is going to work for a Myrtle story, because you're on book 3 now, and what maybe isn't the right type of direction to go?
Well, it's nice in the one sense that I have a big team that participates in the process, and we have had some moments particularly on book 4, which I just turned in, where what I thought was a fantastic, fabulously perfect, morbidly middle grade idea was a little too far for my editor, and it was going to revolve around a sort of a case of seafaring survival cannibalism, and she's like, no cannibals. So on the one hand, she's like, you can save that for another audience, and I was like, there's no other audience, only 10-year-olds want to read about cannibals.
Exactly.
And she says, yes,
but
your 10-year-olds have 7-year-old siblings.
Yes.
And those 7-year-olds have parents.
I was going to say the parents and librarians, teachers are not going to want you to go there, probably.
It's the parents of the 7-year-olds who do not want their 10-year-olds talking about cannibalism at the dinner table. So that one we did back off on that one. She's like, you can save it for another book. And I was like, there's probably not another book, but you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. So you hinted a little bit at, because like my book is inspired by Agatha Christie. I lean on that heavily. You talked a little bit about your second book being that way. Do you draw from some of those? I mean, obviously you hinted that you do, but how much do you look at what's written for adults essentially, or some of the classics, and how much does that inspire your work?
Entirely. Everything is these books consciously lean into classic mystery tropes. And the thing I think you and I have touched on this before on our little mini tour that we've taken this year together, books like Agatha Christie, which a lot of young readers get steered to, who are interested in reading mysteries, and kids who so you are an expert in reluctant readers and writing books at with the high interest, lower reading level, and I'm sort of the opposite, and I'm writing books for kids who read up. And so those kids who read up so often end up reading adult books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is fine. I love Agatha Christie growing up, loved Sherlock Holmes, loved all of those things. But Agatha Christie novels don't star 12-year-olds.
No.
They're not about 12-year-olds. They don't have a 12-year-old, or, they don't have kids doing kid things and having the kids get to take charge, have the grand adventure, and give us that wonderful perspective. And that's actually why I started writing middle grade. I had been writing YA. I'd been writing YA fantasy, and my YAs were trending a little darker and sexier and older. But I was getting all of this fan mail from 5th and 6th graders who were loving the sophisticated language and the dense plotting and the historical settings and the intrigue. And I thought, I need to write something for these kids. And it wasn't that I necessarily woke up one day and was like, I need to write a murder mystery, because that's what these kids, kids do not have nearly enough murder in their life. It was simply that with a title like Premeditated Myrtle and Cold-Blooded Myrtle, they just lend themselves naturally to murder mysteries. And an interesting side point to this was how many kids I hear from now who say, I didn't know there were murder mysteries for me. And you've probably gotten that too. And so and so in an ideal world, no one would ever read about murder, because it would not be a thing. But we're certainly not the first people to write murder mysteries for kids. That started with the Penny Dreadfuls in Myrtle's era. And I think there is a way to tread that line where you let young readers experience an adventure in which they can take charge of seeking justice and righting a wrong in some sort of way without being traumatizing or leaning into the violent part of the story. And
I think you hinted at it a bit with the cozy angle. That's how I look at it. It's similar to that, where it's a cozy mystery, but for kids.
Yes. And so when with Myrtle, we tread the line a little bit more because she is so into forensic science, and so there's this classic moment in Premeditated, in book 1, where Miss Judson, her governess, brings her this book on toxicology that she's been wanting to read. And it's a real toxicology manual from the era. And she's reading it, and Miss Judson is playing with the cat, who's brand new to them. And Myrtle says, yes, I'm going to need some arsenic, some other piece of equipment, and something to dissolve a stomach.
I remember that.
And that is about as gory and that's pretty gory, but we don't actually get any, we hint at the scientific methodology, but we don't see any of it really on stage. But there's a real need for all kinds of books, for all kinds of readers, and to give young readers a safe place to explore all kinds of different interests. And better that your kid is learning about forensic toxicology maybe from me than than from experimenting on on the neighbors.
Well, and plus I like to think, I love mysteries, and I love the idea of us cultivating the future mystery readers of, as they're adults, trying to keep kids reading and trying to keep them engaged in the puzzle. And you do that in such a great way.
Oh, thank you.
So it brings me to, you're talking a little bit about the forensic side of it. Now, I get the feeling, and I love research, I get the feeling you do a ton of research to make these books what they are.
Yes. And so we were talking a little bit beforehand, and you said you asked if there were any interesting and fun facts that I had come across while I was doing
Yeah.
I was sort of stumped, and I was like, okay, so one thing to know about me is everything is interesting.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
and Myrtle is very much that way as well. So when you write historical fiction, one of the really sad parts of it is that when you only have 75,000 words in a tightly plotted story, you don't get so many of the really fascinating things don't make it into the story at all, because you can't figure out a way to twist that weird fact into the narrative in a way that feels any sort of natural. Well, the interesting, right from the start, when Myrtle started talking on the page, she didn't even try. Suddenly there were, if some little interesting tidbit came up, she had a footnote for it. And so these books, in a very real way, are about indulging curiosity and celebrating kids being curious about their world and about, so we all know those kids who glom onto one subject matter, read absolutely everything they can, and then chatter your ear off about every little detail about dinosaurs or geology or forensic toxicology, one of those things. And
exactly.
So,
I'm one of those people that if I get my teeth into something interesting, I'll be the person at the cocktail party going,
exactly,
let me tell you, which is great. That's the great part.
Every fourth mammal on the planet is a bat. See, don't you just feel like you know, now you know, and now I've shared that with you, and we have this book.
So on your website, you talk about being a maker, which I thought was fascinating. I'm hoping that we're kind of segueing away a little bit from the books with that, but I'm sort of interested in how does it relate to the books? Talk to us and tell us about being a maker, because I find it fascinating.
So this is an interesting part of my identity that I've always kind of known, but it was in fact an author who put it into words that resonated with me, and it was a Robert Westall, the late great YA author from Britain. He wrote a terrific book called Ghost Abbey about a girl who and her father who travel around Britain renovating old buildings. And she loves the process of working on the old buildings. And she's just like her dad, and they do this together. And the building that they're working on gets vandalized. And she is just stumped. And she's like, how can anyone take something beautiful and destroy it? And her father says to her, there are makers and breakers in the world, and that we'll never understand each other. And I saw that and I was like, a maker.
Yeah.
I'm a maker. I make things. And so the main thing I make obviously is books.
Yeah.
But books are very abstract, and for most of your experience as an author with the book, it's all here. Or it's digital blips on a screen.
Yeah. There are other people do the making part, kind of.
By this point, you're on the next thing in your head, and the blips on screen and the physical part of it. And so when I'm doing that, my hands get very twitchy. Yeah. And I just need to have something to do. Excuse me. And there's so many making things that I could talk about, but what I really like to do is make physical things that call back to the books that I'm working on, to bring things more into a tangible form in the real world. And when I do YA, I do a lot of historical costuming of the eras that I'm writing in. But with Myrtle, my character's 12, and I am not 12, and I'm not the things that Myrtle would be wearing.
A little 12. Right?
Yeah. I have a Myrtle model who gets a lot of my making impulses on her behalf. So this is kind of inspired by the outfit she wears on the cover of book 1, and the first thing I made for her was the midi that she has on the cover of book 2, which she doesn't actually wear in the book. But part of it is, as I said, bringing the tangible to life. But I like to share the idea of being a maker with kids, because there is an enormous power in finding your own voice as a maker, in realizing that you can take an idea of something that does not exist, that only exists in your head, and turn it into reality.
It's very powerful and positive, especially for kids. When you spend a lot of your time being told what to do, if you can just take something from beginning to end, it feels really great.
Something that's all of yours, that's that you have ownership of the idea, and the ability to make an idea become reality is sort of how the planet functions. And it's makers who give us vaccines and spaceships and Zoom, and so on the one hand, you've got people who are sewing their own clothes, but on the other hand, you've got everything we have, someone made it. And I think that the power of having that is really, really strong for kids. It gives kids something really, there are a lot of things, a lot of kids hear all the time, every day, about the benefits of athletics and of being a team player and of being healthy.
Right.
This is, another side of maybe you're not good at soccer, but you're busy with your Legos, and that might not get the same kind of recognition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's
powerful. It is.
It's powerful. I'm really excited because there is a library locally in Kansas City that is opening a makerspace this spring, and they've asked me to come and do a program on making for kids, and I'm really looking forward to that.
You're so lucky to have that over. That's fantastic. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, we have a makerspace at our library that I've never been able to use because it's only open on Wednesday mornings, which is when my writers group meets across the building. And so I'm like, I really want to use their spray paint booth, but I'll stay here and let you read my manuscript instead.
That's so cool. That's amazing. All right. So we talked a bit about your research, and I think I have an idea of how you keep things fresh, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about the series and how you keep it interesting from one book to the next, because you're talking already about book 4. I've written a series myself. It's not easy to keep it interesting and still keep your character recognizable for, series readers.
And that, I think, on the one hand, with the Myrtle books and series for a mystery series in particular, is each story stands alone. So each one presents its own set of problems. It's not necessarily one book in 7 parts where you're trying to keep that action going. So on the one hand, you get to start fresh in each new adventure, and the time frames of the Myrtle books are pretty brief. They're anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, and so the action gets compressed. And for me, part of it is the setting. I have an idea of where I think would be fun to take my characters, and a garden, a train, a seaside, and then of course, because it's me, something always goes really awry with that idea. So instead of the fabulous seaside that's advertised on the cover of this book, you've got a pier that's been destroyed 15 years ago by a ship running into it, and a town where nobody really wants it doesn't really want. It's a fishing village, and they're happy being a fishing village, and it's not at all as advertised. And instead of spending the summer at the seaside, you're there in rainy, cold, freezing October. And so it's a combination of what's new and fun for me, and what sounds like a adventure, something that's fun to see in.
I recognize a lot of it because that's how I start. A lot of the time it's the setting and the visual sort of element of it where I start to feel like, oh, this is going to be a cool adventure if I go here, which is so fun.
So book 4, which I know we're talking about book 3, but book 4 was when I sold the series. I had all of book 1 and 3 more titles, and by the time I was writing pitches for them, and by the time I got to book 4, I was like, some random thing that didn't have anything to do with anything that ended up on the page, but sounded good 4 years ago. But along the way, like with the Christmas Village debacle, I realized as I was doing as I was watching mysteries and reading mysteries, I realized that there's this great mystery trope that appears particularly in series TV, where the detective is in the hospital and witnesses a murder in the hospital, and then nobody believes him.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how cool would that be in a Victorian hospital? Because that is something that we probably, that most, so a lot of this is new to young readers anyway. A lot of these,
I know that that's fun about writing a mystery for kids, is that some of the things that are cliche and old hat for us are completely new for the kids, which is so fun to introduce them to those things. So you talk about that. That's the fourth book then, because that was my last question I wanted to ask you. That's what's next for you, right?
That's what's next. And I've got, I just got revision notes from my editor, and she's like, I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. And, if you finish this by the time I get back, you can send it straight on to the production. And I was like, did you see my book tour? I can 100% promise you that I will not have this done by the time you get back. But thank you for your faith in me.
So when is it due out? When because I'm looking at the series, and I want to try to think of the viewers here. Some of them may be fans and have read the first two already and are anxious, hopefully, to buy the third. But a lot of time, this may be a new series for viewers out there, or for people who might be looking at buying this for the holidays for someone. So the fourth book, just so we sort of know as fans, when's the fourth book due?
So what's a year from today?
Okay.
So whatever that next Tuesday, what will that be? The
fall of next year.
Yeah, next October. So yeah.
Oh, outstanding.
But yeah, so that's how. Yeah, so it's
what's next for you? You sound very busy. I am so excited for the series and for new fans to discover it. And maybe there's some questions out.
I would love that.
There in the chat, and we'll go see what John is up to.
Yep. So before we get into questions from the chat, Fleur, can you tell everybody a little bit about Midnight at the Barclay Hotel?
Yes, I wanted it to be about Elizabeth, but I will.
No. You have been kind enough.
Really about.
Yeah.
So Midnight at the Barclay Hotel is my mystery, Agatha Christie style mystery for kids. It's 3 kids who kind of tag along with the adults in their lives to a hotel that's like the Stanley Hotel, which will be familiar for adults, but for kids is completely new. And they end up there thinking they're getting a weekend getaway, but turns out Mr. Barclay has been murdered, and all the adults are suspects in the murder of Mr. Barclay. So the kids are trying to uncover motive, means, opportunity. It's a great introduction to mystery for kids. And there's some ghostly elements, but not so scary to scare kids away. And the paperback is out now. It won. Yes, you have a copy. It won the Colorado Book Award over the summer, so that's been exciting, and it's been nominated for.
That's amazing.
Yes, it's been a passion project because I love mysteries more than anything in the world, and it's been great to start sharing that with kids and hopefully make them mystery readers for life.
So probably you've been to the Stanley Hotel.
Yes, I did a ghost hunting tour. It was so fun. I saw no ghosts.
One or you ran one?
Oh, no, I took one. Oh, okay. No, I did not run one. Someone else did that, and we got to film all over the Stanley Hotel. I highly recommend it. Beautiful antiques and woodwork and lots of spooky setting stuff, but no ghosts. So I'm still to be convinced. But yes, I did take a tour, which was super fun.
Is entirely off topic, but I went to a writer's retreat a couple of summers ago at the St. James Hotel in Red Wing, Minnesota, near Minneapolis, just a little north, I think north of Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those buildings that started as one building and then they added on with the next building, and it is amazing. There are staircases that go nowhere. You can't get from one part of the building to another part. It's wonderful. And while I was there, all the other writers were like, this place is crazy. I can't stand it. And I'm like, this is the best place in the world.
Right? That was how I was at the Stanley. I'm like, I am putting this in a book. This is it.
Like,
so,
do I have to go home? This is...
Yes. Absolutely. So yes.
And so for anybody watching out there, like Fleur said, like I definitely, like one of the things that I love about her book is that she does such a great job of explaining kind of those mechanics of mysteries to young readers. And it's so great to have that, to be able to give them to a kid and explain, you know, this is what a motive is, and this is what red herrings are. And it's so wonderful to be able to kind of introduce kids to the genre through that. Because like you said, you know, it's there are starting to be more young adult mysteries, but for the longest time, like kids would come in and be like you said, like there are no teens in Agatha Christie, or, you know, we like to start, you know, as kids get older and they're teens and they want stuff that's adult mysteries, but maybe not necessarily ready for adult content. We love to start them on things like Laurie King's Mia Russell series, or Alan Bradley's Flavia Deluce are a really good place to jump kids in because the character is younger, but it's so nice to see that authors and publishers are embracing like actual kids mysteries that aren't just like kids urban fantasy, which I'm also a huge fan of, but it's nice to see just kind of good classic whodunits for younger readers too.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much being published that's great now, which is wonderful to see.
So Elizabeth, can you talk a little bit about the decision you mentioned early on about having the first 2 books come out back to back like they did? That's an unusual publishing thing.
Yeah, so remember the pandemic?
Yeah, vaguely.
So book 1 was scheduled to come out in March of May, last spring. It was supposed to come out in spring of 2020, but right when it would have been shipping to booksellers, America went into lockdown and FedEx stopped shipping non-essentials to cities.
Yeah.
And so they physically could not get the books to the booksellers. And one really, really nice thing about Algonquin Young Readers, which is part of Workman, which is now part of Hatchet, is that as all of the books are printed in the States. So they're pretty nimble and they can make these kind of scheduling decisions on the fly. So the original plan was to have book 1 come out in May and then book 2 come out in December. Because if you're a series fan, you know, as soon as you finish one, you're like, give me the next book, please. Like, where's the Raven book? Fleur?
Summer. Yes.
And so, but then when the book got shifted from May to October, it then was weird to have something come out in October and December. So my editor, who has been in the business for Elise Howard at Algonquin, she's amazing. She's kind of done everything and knows everything. So I'm really, really lucky to have all this vast knowledge of her editorial and book selling experience. She said she said, we'll put them out together in a once in a lifetime 2-book event extravaganza. Nice. And she said, we used to do this all the time in the 80s with series books, and particularly like series paperbacks. But it got to the point where the authors couldn't keep up with that schedule of getting 2 books out every year. So she said, nobody's done it in a really long time. And so it'll be interesting to see. I haven't gotten my first statement yet to see how it actually worked out. But if anyone, lots of people know there's book 1, obviously. Book 3 is getting a lot of attention. Book 2 just happens to be my personal favorite. So make sure you have not missed How to Get Away with Myrtle. Loads of fun on that one. So
awesome. Yeah, that was.
We should get all our shopping in early. So I'm like making my lists now for gifts because of supply issues again. So
and I think John can speak to that as well. With the effect that it will have on bookseller bottom line is really helpful, since we all know we're going to be buying gifts.
Yeah, it's been, that period last March and like through May, when like things were like everything, you were like, oh wait, this book was supposed to come out. Oh wait, it's been pushed to this. Like that was a crazy time period. And now stuff is like getting pushed like even just like a week or two. Like we're doing an event with Reese Bowen tomorrow because her book was supposed to come out today, but now they pushed it back a week. There was a lot of stuff that was supposed to come out this week that got pushed next week. So luckily so luckily with virtual events, we can just say, okay, well, we'll just push the event back. Or with Reese, we just said, we've got it scheduled. It'll just be a pre-release event. But yeah, so if anybody out there is watching, I'm sure you've heard there are lots of supply chain issues, which Algonquin's lucky that they're being printed here in the States, because they're publishers that have books that are literally sitting in the middle of the ocean on a ship, and there aren't enough people to unload the books. Yeah. Like booksellers are joking that we're all just going to head to the docks and like unload books so we have things to sell for the holidays. So
that's a long walk from Kansas.
Colorado as well, where I am.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be an interesting holiday season. So for anybody out there who's watching who hasn't heard that yet, basically what everybody's recommending is if you see something that you want, that you're going to want a book, buy it now, because it's going to take a little bit longer for things to go into reprints, because especially older titles, which it's really affecting too, because publishers are scrambling to get new things printed. So if an older title is temporarily unavailable, it's taking a little bit longer for those things to get reprinted. So it's definitely, it just seems like it's another thing after another. So we're
right where, yes, there seems to be something else where you're like, I thought we were done. We were done with hard things.
Yeah.
But no.
But we've got these great new paperback releases.
Mm-hmm.
So, that are in stock and in bookstores, and I don't have any of my paperbacks. We'll pretend this is one. But yeah, the first two Myrtles just came out in paperback, so they should
excellent.
Be, last month, I think, about a month ago. So we kind of beat that, but it was weird. We were saying at the beginning of the pre-show. You hate to be the person that benefits in any way from the pandemic, but the shift of the release of Premeditated Myrtle actually worked out really well, because everyone's attention in the spring was not on how do we get through, we're all bored, we need something to do. It was, are we going to live through the week? And so by the time Premeditated came out, the world had settled into the new rhythm, and it got a lot more attention than I think it had.
I think what's great is that I'm seeing more parents reading books with kids together. I'm seeing more teachers reading the books in the classroom, which is of course great, and they're using it as an introduction to mystery, which I'm seeing some positive things which we'll hold on to in this difficult time, I think.
I have a friend told me yesterday that her younger daughter, I think she's a fifth grader, is studying mysteries in her class, and she found how to get away with Myrtle under her pillow. She was making her bed.
That's so sweet.
For class, and I was like, that is the best.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely.
So let's talk real quick about reading taste. So you can't mention each other's books because we've established you read each other's books and your fans. What's something that you've read that you've liked, that you've enjoyed lately? And do you guys read a mix of young reader books to kind of stay up with what's happening in the genre and adult? So let's start with Fleur.
Oh, I'm not prepared for this question because there's so many books in it. I always get asked this. So I do read a lot. I read for awards as well. So that sometimes becomes my giant pile. But for children, I like Pax a lot, which is a book about, it's not a mystery, but it's a children's book about a fox, which is a very sweet story. I'm trying to remember the title of another book. New Kid, I greatly liked, which is a book about a kid who's a new kid, and it's a graphic novel, wonderful book. The Truth as Told by Mason Buttle, which is a long title, but it's a literary mystery. I highly recommend it. I think it won the National Book Award or something, a book award. And it's a mystery, but it's a little bit more literary. So it's about a boy who's trying to uncovered a mystery of his friend's death. So that's kind of off the top of my head what I can think of. And I read, of course, tons of mysteries for adults as well. So yes, I'm forever reading, which is great.
And the same for me. Right now, I am immersed in research for whatever my next project is going to be. And so that's like a variety of different crazy things. I've got Bill Bryson's book, One Summer, about 1927. I've got that down on the exercise bike. And I've got a book that's a new release from Kim Cook called Sensational, about girl stunt reporters, which I became interested in after there is a new character in Myrtle's team, a journalist named Imogen Shelley in Cold Blooded, and so the sort of the story of female journalists captured my attention, and when this came out, I snatched it up. So that's what I have going. And I've been stocking up on classic books from my childhood that I'm missing copies of. So I've got a copy of All the Kind Family by Sidney Taylor coming, and Peppermints in the Parlor, which is a great creepy mystery coming that my fifth grade teacher read to us. So that's what I've got for on my kids' books reading list right now. But I know I have some catching up to do of my friends and colleagues' books as well. And I'm waiting for that Daybreak on Raven Island book.
Yeah, there's actually for those of you buying the paperback from the bookstore. Yes, in the back is the first few chapters of Daybreak on Raven Island, which is my book that's coming out in the summer of next year. So stuff to look forward to for sure.
Perfect. So last question before we go, Elizabeth, I was just thinking about this. So your titles are so fantastic, and especially with, substituting Myrtle in for murder. So did you name her Myrtle so you could do that, or how did that come about?
Yes, I did.
I love that. Was not expecting that.
Well, so this is what happened. One groggy morning, we are night owls in our house, and so I will be. This is the beginning of my workday today, and then I'll be writing all night. So one groggy, which works fine for me as an author because I can set my own hours. But I was attempting to send my attorney off to his job one morning, and stumbling through the groggy breakfast routine, attempting to have a conversation about some story on the news, and tried to say premeditated murder, and it came out premeditated Myrtle. And I looked at him and I said, that is a middle grade mystery. And so from that moment, it just sort of, I think I was working on Star-Crossed or Liar's Moon at the time. So that title has been sitting there for a really long time. And I always sort of I'd pull it out every once in a while and play with it and think about who the character was. And I always pictured it as a contemporary mystery. But I've never finished any contemporary story that I've ever written because I somehow forget how people live and eat and get out of cars and answer the telephone and all. I'm like, I have no idea. What is the world like? I like fail at 21st century world building. So it just sort of sat there with the title and the idea of the character, and I knew that her dad was going to be a prosecutor, and then another character, Peony the Cat, wandered into the story in the form of an actual cat who showed up at my garage late one rainy night, and everything she said was no. And a chance remark from a friend said, mystery fans love cats, or cat people love mysteries, or you should write about that. And when I thought about what kind of story would star a cat, it just seemed natural that it would be set in a Victorian garden. And then when I had that and I knew Premeditated Myrtle, they just fit together like it was always meant to be, and I was off and running.
Wow.
Yeah, so we owe it all to a Freudian slip.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It is.
All right, so to recap for anybody who might have joined us late, we have been chatting with Elizabeth Bunce, whose newest book, Cold-Blooded Myrtle, just came out today. It is the third in the Myrtle Hardcastle series. And we've been chatting with Fleur Bradley, whose Midnight at the Barclay Hotel just came out in paperback in August. As I mentioned, we're going to have signed book plates for both authors. So if you order it from us, we'll tuck in signed book plates. They're great gifts for any young readers that you have in your lives that you want to convert to mystery readers. We recommend both of them. We hope that you guys will pick them up. If you missed any part of our chat, once we are done, Facebook and YouTube will archive it, so you'll be able to rewatch it from the beginning. Elizabeth and Fleur, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much for kicking off Cold-Blooded Myrtle for us.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been fun.
Our pleasure. You guys have a good evening.
You too.